Hello, and welcome back to another Bloodhunt lore video. This time around, I thought we'd start looking at the characters in Bloodhunt. There's a surprising amount of info about these characters that can be found in bits and pieces throughout the game, but it can be hard to piece it all together into a relatively cohesive image, so I've taken the past few weeks and gone through all of the unlockable lore, screenshots of dialogue, and other sources of info that was available both in and out of the game before early access ended, and pieced it all together for you, mixed with some non-game research and some educated speculation to try and provide you with a bigger picture about these characters. Without further ado, we begin with Maia, as I have had some requests for more info about her in the past. Enjoy! Maia, child of Mikola, is the Primogen of Clan Toreador and the Harpy and Herald of the city of Prague. She was one of the first to arrive at the Castle Prague Elysium in the wake of the fallout from the Second Convention of Prague. Unlike her fellow Camarilla leaders present in the Elysium, she seeks to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict the city finds itself in. Maia is quite young considering the power she wields, having acquired many roles over the course of her time in the city. At first glance, there are those who would write her off as a vapid, neonate party princess, but she is a master manipulator, seducer, and diplomat. She expresses a desire to act as a champion for the mortals of the city, believing that the mortal life gives meaning to the unlife of the kindred. In addition to her important roles among the kindred, she is also well known by the mortals of the city, and has the ear of important political figures and other noteworthy people in Prague and the greater Czech Republic. Many of her plans often involve ways to protect the mortals from undue harm. In the aftermath of the Second Convention, Maia has been kept busy in her role as Harpy. A Harpy is the kindred tasked with keeping track of the boons, favors, and debts owed by one kindred to another, often regardless of sect. These can be anything from small things, such as favors and knowledge traded for a price, to things of larger importance, such as life debts. She keeps track of all such transactions in a small red book she keeps with her. In the nights after the attack, so many such boons are being traded that she scarcely has time to let the ink dry on a page before she must begin a new one. This role puts Maia in the unique position of being in the know for nearly all the secrets in the city, rivaled in such knowledge only by the Nosferatu Primogen Omnis and their network of spies. Despite the fact that the Toreador keep a communal haven in the Rudolfinum Concert Hall, Maia retains a haven of her own, topped by a rooftop garden terrace that doubles as a nightclub. In calmer nights, she can often be found here meeting with guests where she revels in the stories they share and the gifts they often present to her. Opinions of Maia vary greatly. She is well liked and adored by many in both the kindred world and the mortal world, and plays to this view of herself readily. She was commended for her skill during Karlach's reign as prince for the work she undertook in transforming the Castle Prague Elysium into a presentable locale that spoke to the Hellenistic history of the Bruja. In particular, she is the reason for the presence of the large statue that is the Hall of Amenities centerpiece. This statue, known as the Barbarini Faun, was believed to have been carved in the 3rd or 2nd century BCE by an unknown sculptor. It is unclear if it is a replica or in fact the original piece. Despite such praises, there are those who hold her in contempt, seeing her as false and manipulative. They tend to keep this opinion to themselves, however. This includes Prince Marcus, who does not wholly trust Maia, believing her to be disloyal and opportunistic. He allows her to keep her position in the court so that he may keep her close at hand. Another such detractor was the Toreador Gaspard, who was the child of the former Prince Vasily. Gaspard was unsurprised when Maia took a position in court after his sire's abrupt removal from power by Karlach, but he bided his time and maneuvered himself into Marcus's favor before he became prince after Karlach abdicated. When Maia was allowed to remain as Primogen instead of the position going to him, and then she gained the position of Herald on top of it, he had reached his final straw. He set forth a plot to assassinate Maia and thus remove what he felt was the only roadblock preventing him from rising to prominence. The plot failed miserably and resulted in Gaspard's final death. Whatever Maia's true intentions may be, she presents her own views of her fellow kindred much more candidly. She appears to trust Marcus wholly and puts a lot of stock in his leadership. She seems convinced that without him, the city would fall apart and quickly endanger the lives of both kindred and mortals alike. She is determined to see him rescued as long as the methods do not put his life at risk. She was extremely worried that the prince did not survive the aftermath of the Second Convention, having witnessed more capable fighters fall in the chaos, but is relieved to be proven wrong when Omnis returns with news that he yet lives. She also expresses worry for the elders of the other various clans present in the city and hopes that they will return. Maia is also quick to share her opinions of her fellow kindred who have managed to find their way to the Elysium. Though Kirill has extensive knowledge of warfare, she feels setting him loose on the city will result in extensive destruction and be devastating for both sides of the conflict. With the aid of Custis, she has managed to keep him leashed for the time being. She plays to Custis's vanity to gain his vote in decisions, though this manipulation failed when the Bloodhunt was called on all anarchs, as she was hoping to avoid such extremes. Despite her relief at the news Omnis brought, Maia is bothered by the Nosferatu and the network of spies they control. Their efficiency exceeds that of her own contacts, and she begrudgingly acknowledges that they have never been wrong. The full extent of Maia's life and kindred unlife is mostly hidden to us, but she has revealed a few key details that allow us to glean a decent timeline of the events that led her into modern nights. Though we don't know for sure where she was born, her mortal life did find her in LA for a time in her youth when she was an actress. This seems likely to have been during the late 1950s or early 1960s during the heyday of schlocky sci-fi B-movies. Her third and final role was the character of Diane for the movie The Island of the Giant Men. Diane was a typical damsel in distress character, whose only function was to cry and scream and be rescued by the hero. When the original director had a nervous breakdown and was replaced, Maia convinced the new director to change the ending, allowing her to save herself instead of being saved by the hero. In the revised ending, her character stole the spike club from the chief of the Giants and beat him to death with it, claiming some agency for the character and allowing her to end her time as an actress with more fondness than she would have otherwise. Sometime after this period of her life, she found her way to Prague, where she claims she was welcomed warmly by both kindred and mortals. It is unclear if she was aware of the former at this time. She became a central figure in the social life of Prague, gaining the ear of important figures in the government. This seems to have taken place sometime in the 1960s, as she mentions having entered the city more than 50 years ago. In August of 1968, a friend of Maia's from LA was visiting. She had set up a meeting with the president, but it was abruptly canceled as Warsaw Pact soldiers invaded Czechoslovakia. The day after the invasion began, Maia witnessed her first death when an old woman was shot by a young soldier for daring to stand up to them. She claimed that the event changed her life and foreshadowed her unlife. A few days later, her friend was quickly evacuated along with the others from the US, but Maia chose to stay behind, saying that it was where she needed to be. Based on the fact that she states that this murder foreshadowed her life as a kindred, it seems likely that she was embraced sometime during this tumultuous period in history. We know only that her sire went by the name of Mikola. She made her way quickly through kindred society in Prague after her embrace, using secrets and information to her advantage. She naturally grew into the role of Harpy as she continued to collect favors and secrets, keeping track of them in her little red book, and becoming a power player amongst the kindred in the span of only a few decades. She has maintained a strong mask among the mortals throughout the years, and was a notable force during the Velvet Revolution in 1989. She regrets not keeping track of the weapons used in the fighting of this time. After the country regained its independence, many of them were quickly scooped up by the criminal elements and are now finding their way into anarch hands. When Karlak violently removed Vasily from power in 1998, Maia was suspiciously absent from the court. Afterward, Karlak appointed her to the Primogen Council. Though she saw him as a brute, she felt she owed him a great debt and claims that he set her free. She likely had a hand in organizing the original Convention of Prague, helping with logistics and providing cover for the kindred that needed to enter the city. This was relatively easy thanks to her time spent as a secret confidant to many of the country's presidents, as well as being a central figure in the social life of Prague. This was done via a European Economic Summit that was held at the same time. After the fallout of the first convention in 2012, she claimed she did not wish to see Karlak deposed, but when Marcus claimed Praxis, she was allowed to keep her spot on the Primogen Council and was given the position of herald as well. This caused the ire of the Toreador Gaspard, who was looking to claim her seat, and he moved to have her assassinated. This was unsuccessful and resulted in his death, removing yet another piece from the board set in opposition to her. Maia was also instrumental in organizing the Second Convention of Prague, using the guise of a human rights summit to allow kindred from all over the world to gather. She was present when the entity interrupted the meeting in its final minutes and everything fell apart. Despite the chaos of those moments, she managed to flee and was one of the first to make her way to the old Castle Prague Elysium, where she and her fellow surviving Primogen plan on how to proceed in the aftermath.